Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're venturing into, well, a really fascinating, maybe unsettling collection of information we brought together. We're going to explore these threads connecting the tragic story of a young model, the infamous Jeffrey Epstein, and his relationship with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The sort of shadowy existence of these alleged hidden tapes, and some really unexpected links to international finance and political influence.
It does seem like a lot of separate pieces at first glance.
It really does. It feels like a complex web, but our goal here is to try and untangle it a bit, see what patterns might emerge.
Absolutely. And what's quite striking about the sources you've pulled together for this is how these, seemingly distinct stories start to hint at potentially larger and frankly quite concerning undercurrents when you look at them together.
Okay, let's dig in then. So the sources. We have a YouTube transcript about the model Ruslana Korshunova, right? Lots of questions around her death.
Yes, that one. And then there's another transcript, this interview with a former law enforcement officer. He claims he has encrypted Epstein tapes.
Wow, okay. And Katie Johnson's testimony, very detailed about her alleged encounters with both Epstein and Trump.
Mm-hmm. That's a key piece. Plus transcripts from Law and Crime Network and Midas Touch. They're focused on those Palm Beach grand jury documents that just came out.
Epstein ones, yeah. And what they might say about his ties to Trump.
Exactly. But it doesn't stop there, does it?
No. Your sources also bring in excerpts from Russia with Cash podcast that touches on Trump's business dealings, mentions Roman Abramovich, Ihor Kolomoisky.
Right, the Ukrainian oligarch. And that connects to another source, this big investigation from the OCCRP.
OCCRP, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project.
That's the one. Their investigation looks into how Ukrainian oligarchs, including Kolomoisky, allegedly moved billions using a Cyprus branch of private bank.
Billions. Okay. And then there are these pasted text snippets scattered throughout. They seem to link Epstein to all sorts of things. A Ponzi scheme, Prince Andrew, Ruslana Korshunova again.
Powerful figures, locations of alleged abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like little connecting dots, or potential dots anyway.
Right. And a Reddit post analyzing the Palm Beach files, specifically the Trump-Epstein phone calls, plus an article from the Daily Boulder speculating, quite heavily actually,
about whether those alleged Epstein tapes could explain Trump's relationship with Putin, referencing Sarah Ransom's claims and FBI concerns. Yeah, that's in there too.
And then, kind of out of left field, but maybe relevant contextually, excerpts from the Lobby USA about AIPAC.
Yeah, the pro-Israel lobby group. It raises questions about, foreign influence, information gathering, that kind of thing.
And finally, just for context on the modeling world, the Netflix doc White Hot about Abercrombie and Fitch, the pressure, the beauty standards.
Right, gives you a sense of the environment, maybe.
So, the mission, as we see it, is to try and understand the underlying connections here. What's the significance of all this, especially regarding Epstein, Trump, and I guess any wider implications?
It definitely feels like we're wading into some murky waters.
For sure. So let's start with Ruslana Korshunova's story. She was this, incredibly successful young model. Russian Rapunzel, they called her.
Yes, exactly. A really striking young woman from Kazakhstan. The transcript paints her as, just 20 years old, but already a top model.
And multilingual, too. English, German, Kazakh, Russian.
Discovered super young at 15, signed with big agencies like IMG, moved to the U.S., achieved global fame pretty quickly.
Living in a fancy Manhattan apartment by 20, sending money home. It sounds like the dream, right?
On the surface, yes. A classic modeling success story, you could say.
But the transcript suggests things weren't so straightforward beneath that glossy image.
Not at all. Apparently, around age 20, despite all the success, friends said she wanted out. She was sick of it, is the quote, I think.
And she'd gone through a breakup with an older, wealthy guy, led to depression.
That's what friends reported, yeah. A significant downturn, deep depression. And this is where it gets, really interesting and maybe a bit disturbing.
The Rose of the World group.
Exactly. She got involved with this self-development seminar, Rose of the World, apparently very controversial and really expensive.
How expensive?
The transcript mentions up to $300 a day, and friends noticed a really negative change in her after she joined. Agitation, self-blame.
Worrying social media posts, feeling lost, that kind of thing.
And the methods sound intense. Suggestions of, cult-like dynamics, screaming, yelling, constant criticism.
That sounds incredibly destabilizing, especially for someone maybe already feeling vulnerable.
Potentially, yes. High-pressure tactics like that can be very manipulative. She attended for about 2 months, apparently.
And then, tragically, she died in June 2008. Officially ruled a suicide, jumping from her apartment building.
Correct. But as the transcript highlights, a lot of people question the circumstances. Rumors of foul play, or maybe the Rose of the World group's involvement.
And didn't a friend of hers, someone else who attended that group?
Yes, that's a chilling detail. A friend who was in Rose of the World for about a year also died by suicide, in a very similar way about a year after Ruslana.
Wow. That definitely raises questions about that group's impact.
It certainly makes you wonder about the psychological effects, especially on young people in that high-pressure modeling world.
Thinking about that Abercrombie doc, White Hot, it really shows the brutal beauty standards back then, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That culture of exclusion, constant evaluation, it could make young people incredibly insecure, maybe more susceptible to groups promising quick fixes or belonging.
Definitely. And then there's this other layer, one of those pasted text snippets you included. It mentions Ruslana was allegedly
Taken to Epstein's island, yeah.
a couple years before her death, around the same time as Prince Andrew's alleged parties with young Russian models, the ones dressed bizarrely.
That's the claim in the snippet. It adds this whole other really dark layer of potential exploitation and vulnerability to her story.
It suggests a possible connection to, well, a much bigger, darker network.
Exactly.
Hmm.
If you start thinking about Epstein's whole alleged operation, it points towards a potential pattern, targeting young women, especially in or around modeling.
And the Prince Andrew link, those parties.
Hmm.
It paints a grim picture of the environment these young women might have been exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Highlights their potential vulnerability even more.
Okay, let's pivot then to Epstein and Trump. Because these newly released Palm Beach grand jury documents, combined with Katie Johnson's testimony, it seems pretty damning.
It really does shift the perspective, or at least adds significant weight.
The Reddit thread you shared highlights the call logs from Epstein's assistant, right?
Yeah.
Showing tons of calls between Trump and Epstein in 2004.
Yeah, before Trump married Melania. And what's really concerning, as the logs apparently show, is the timing. Well, sometimes these calls from Trump to Epstein or vice versa happened right before Epstein made calls to young victims or arranged their transportation.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's...
Specific.
It is. And the Midas Touch analysis really hammers this point home. Trump's name pops up repeatedly in those logs.
So not just a casual acquaintance.
It strongly suggests a significant ongoing relationship. And the timing, again, linking calls to victim contact, it raises very serious questions about Trump's awareness at the absolute minimum.
And then you layer on Katie Johnson's testimony from 2016, which is just, it's horrific to read.
It really is a truly disturbing firsthand account, if accurate.
She claims she encountered Trump at Epstein's parties starting when she was only 13.
13.
Yeah.
And she alleges her recruiter told her she had to give Trump a hand job with a glove specifically instructed.
And later oral sex with a condom. Again, specific instructions.
Mm-hmm. And she claims Trump knew she was underage, knew she was 13, a virgin. That's a particularly damning allegation. The details she gives, Trump watching others have sex, the glove, the condom, it paints a picture of just deep depravity.
And callousness. A complete disregard for these young girls, allegedly.
And it gets even worse, doesn't it? The racist remarks she alleges he made towards Epstein about being Jewish.
Yes, that's in her testimony. Along with this disturbing maid fantasy request and what she calls a rape scene scenario.
Where she says Trump got enraged and assaulted her when she expressed discomfort.
So that's her allegation. And she talks about the lasting negative impact, how it affected her life, her relationships. It's devastating.
If her account is accurate, it's not just sexual abuse allegations. It's a pattern of dehumanization, cruelty.
Exactly. Her description of Trump's alleged dismissive, cruel remarks afterward. It suggests a profound lack of empathy, a disturbing sense of entitlement.
And the Midas Touch analysis also mentioned reports of Trump looking at real estate with Epstein in West Palm Beach.
Yeah, another indicator of their closeness. And then there's Trump's own words, that 2002 interview.
Right, where he called Epstein a terrific guy.
And specifically noted their shared interest in women on the younger side.
I mean, that quote, in light of everything else.
It's incredibly revealing, isn't it? His public admission of that shared interest, plus the frequent calls, the real estate stuff, it really solidifies the picture of a close relationship and raises huge questions about what Trump knew and maybe even participated in.
And there's still more, isn't there? The flight logs.
Mm-hmm. Trump allegedly on Epstein's flight logs at least 7 times. That came out during the Ghislaine Maxwell case records.
7 times, okay. And victims testified Epstein brought them to Trump properties, like a casino in Atlantic City.
Yes, that testimony exists. And Virginia Giuffre has said she first met Ghislaine Maxwell at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's resort where Giuffre was working.
So Epstein and Trump were deeply intertwined, socially, maybe illicitly.
It certainly seems that way. It suggests Trump's properties were sometimes locations within Epstein's alleged abuse network.
And Mar-a-Lago being the place Giuffre met Maxwell, it highlights how Trump's own environment might have, well, facilitated Epstein's activities, whether knowingly or not.
Right. And you even found that old Guardian article from '91.
Yeah, describing Trump hosting a party on a yacht for a Look of the Year competition.
Yeah.
Filled with teenage girls, some reportedly as young as 14, and older men.
1991. It suggests this wasn't just about Epstein later on. Maybe a pattern of being around young women in potentially exploitative situations.
It provides some disturbing historical context, doesn't it? Makes you wonder.
It really does. And then fast forward to him being president, wishing Ghislaine Maxwell well during her trial.
Yeah, and trying to downplay how long he knew her despite years in Palm Beach.
It's pretty chilling. And those Harry Stern clips.
Oh, God, those bragging about going backstage at pageants to inspect naked women.
Making crude remarks about Lindsay Lohan when she was barely 18, maybe younger. And even his own daughter, Ivanka.
It's all just deeply unsettling. It paints a very, very disturbing picture of his attitudes, especially towards young women.
Absolutely. A profoundly troubling attitude comes across.
Right.
His comments about his own daughter, just incredibly inappropriate.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot. Let's shift gears slightly. Epstein's financial background. This is interesting, too. One of those pasted text sources says Towers Financial, where he consulted, was a Ponzi scheme.
Right, and the guy in charge, Hoffenberg, apparently claimed Epstein was the mastermind behind it.
And another source suggests Epstein was doing some kind of bounty hunting for fraud money, using his knowledge of illicit networks.
It suggests a pretty deep, maybe sophisticated understanding of complex financial fraud, doesn't it?
Definitely. And then in '89, he becomes friends with Leslie Wexner, the Victoria's Secret guy.
Yes. And incredibly, Wexner apparently gave Epstein power of attorney over his entire fortune in 1991.
Power of attorney over everything. That's
Over
extraordinary.
It indicates an unbelievable level of trust or influence or something. It likely gave Epstein huge financial resources, maybe a layer of protection, too.
And right around that same time, '91, this Ukrainian oligarch, Ihor Kolomoisky, starts Private Bank in Ukraine.
Reportedly aimed initially at oligarchs needing to move money out of the former Soviet Union to places like Cyprus.
Okay, so now we're bridging towards international finance.
Exactly. And if you connect this to that OCCRP investigation we mentioned earlier,
Right, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project.
they looked into how Private Bank's Cyprus branch allegedly became this major channel for moving huge sums of money.
How huge.
The investigation alleges Kolomoisky and his partner, Hennady Boholyubov, funneled an astonishing $5.5 billion out of Ukraine via that Cyprus branch just between 2013 and 2016.
$5.5 billion. Wow. And the report suggests it was basically money laundering.
Strongly suggests it, yes. Designed to obscure where the money came from.
And this Cyprus branch, it opened back in the late 90s and was the only Ukrainian bank allowed an overseas branch.
That's what the report says. And a Ukrainian central bank official apparently called it, quite bluntly, a money laundromat.
A money laundromat. Not subtle.
Not at all. And even Cyprus's own central bank fined them in 2016, placed restrictions, citing complicated schemes, allowing funds to just disappear.
And billions got moved out right before the bank was nationalized in Ukraine later that year.
Billions moved to other places in Europe first. It points to a really sophisticated operation designed to hide the source and destination of massive amounts of money.
So while there's no direct link in these sources connecting this specific activity to Epstein,
Right, no direct link is stated here.
it's happening around the same time he's involved in major financial dealings, and it involves these huge, potentially illicit international money flows.
Exactly. It provides crucial context. It shows the kind of environment, the kind of opaque systems that powerful people with potentially shady activities might operate within.
And the From Russia with Cash podcast mentioned Kolomoisky in relation to Trump's business dealings, too.
Yes, adding another little layer of potential connection or at least proximity in that financial world.
And it wasn't just Cyprus, right? The private bank subsidiary in Latvia was involved in money laundering, too, linked to a Moldovan fraud scheme.
Correct. So it seems like there was a pattern with private banks' foreign operations. It just underscores the complexity, the opacity of international finance, and how these systems can be exploited.
Makes you wonder what other connections might exist beneath the surface, even if they're not obvious here.
It certainly does. These hidden financial networks can operate on a massive scale.
Okay, let's turn to maybe the most intriguing or speculative part. These alleged Epstein tapes.
Ah, yes, the tapes.
This former Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputy claims he was given a hard drive of encrypted videos back in 2010.
By a friend, yeah. Joseph Ferrari, who worked for Palm Beach police, involved in the initial Epstein investigation.
And the deputy says he made copies 720 videos apparently, but never watched them before fleeing to Russia in 2016 after an FBI raid on a separate matter.
That's his account, as per the transcript. He says he only became aware of the Epstein content in 2019 after a reporter asked about Rari, who had died by then.
And he claims the FBI has had access to these files since they seized his computers in 2016.
Yes, that's his assertion, which is why he believes pressure should be on the FBI to investigate and release information, not on him.
He mentions his own legal and ethical concerns, potential child pornography, fear of prosecution in Russia.
Understandable concerns given the potential nature of the material.
Did he say he saw anything on the tapes?
He mentioned viewing just a few clips briefly, described them as grainy, 90s footage, one of a girl showering, but he didn't identify any major political figures in what little he saw.
But then you have Sarah Ransom, one of Epstein's alleged victims.
Right. She claimed in emails that sex tapes featuring Donald Trump do exist, and suggested they could be used as leverage.
Leverage, compromise. That's where it gets really interesting politically speaking.
Exactly. And that Daily Boulder article really runs with this. It asks if these alleged tapes could explain Trump's, well, what the article calls his baffling deference to Vladimir Putin.
That deference was widely remarked upon, wasn't it? His dismissal of Russian election interference, the private meetings with Putin, keeping his own advisors out.
The article points all that out, and the fact the FBI reportedly opened a counterintelligence probe into Trump's Russia ties, especially after he fired Comey.
And Trump apparently went to great lengths to hide the details of his conversations with Putin, which just fuels the speculation, right?
Absolutely. The Daily Boulder connects these dots. The possibility of Russia holding compromise, whether it's financial dirt, business dealings, money laundering allegations, or these alleged Epstein tapes and Trump's unusual relationship with Putin.
It's a theory that's definitely been floated around quite a bit.
For sure. And the article notes accurately that Russian intelligence does have a history of using compromise strategically.
So the idea that they might have somehow obtained Epstein's alleged tapes, that's a pretty troubling prospect, isn't it, in terms of potential influence?
Extremely troubling. The very possibility, even unconfirmed, casts this long shadow, raises serious questions about the vulnerability of powerful figures to foreign pressure.
And the whistleblower saying the FBI has had them since 2016 just adds more questions, more calls for transparency.
Definitely intensifies those calls. What do they know? What have they investigated?
Okay, now the final piece you included was about AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby. Seems a bit disconnected at first glance.
On the surface, maybe. But the likely reason you included it is what the transcript from the lobby documentary reveals about their alleged activities.
A chart.
While it details how this powerful lobby group working closely with the Israeli government allegedly engages in pretty extensive surveillance and information gathering on American citizens.
Specifically targeting opponents, like students involved in the BDS movement on campus.
Exactly. The transcript mentions using sophisticated tech, social media intelligence, even covert operations, reportedly, to discredit and undermine them.
Wow. And the Israeli government's Ministry of Strategic Affairs coordinates this, sharing data on Americans.
That's what the documentary transcript alleges. Using tech to monitor social media, identify people involved in BDS almost instantly.
Okay, so how does this connect back, potentially?
Well, if you think about our discussion on compromise influence, the AIPAC info, while a different context, is another example of how powerful entities, potentially including foreign governments via proxies, might gather and use information strategically within the U.S.
So it's like a parallel, showing how information gathering for influence happens, even if there's no direct link suggested here between AIPAC and Epstein.
Precisely. It offers a kind of framework for thinking about how information, maybe including compromising material, can be collected and potentially used by those seeking influence or specific outcomes.
It definitely makes you think about the broader landscape of power, influence, information gathering. It's pervasive.
Hmm.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive, looking at all the info you shared,
Yeah.
it paints a really complex picture, and frankly, a deeply troubling one.
It really does.
We've got Ruslana Korchunova's tragic story, the dark side of modeling. Then the Epstein-Trump connections, looking even stronger now with these documents and the horrific allegations in Johnson's testimony.
Right, and the whole shadowy realm of the alleged Epstein tapes, the whistleblower, the speculation about compromise and political influence, particularly regarding Russia.
It's a lot. And then the glimpse into international finance. Those massive alleged money flows involving Ukrainian oligarchs in Cyprus.
Yeah, even without a direct link stated in these sources to Epstein or Trump, it's a stark reminder of these huge hidden financial networks operating across borders, often involving very powerful people.
So the big question left hanging, I guess, the one for listeners to really think about, is how do these seemingly separate pieces maybe connect in ways that aren't immediately obvious?
Hmm. Could those pressures and vulnerabilities in modeling, finance, politics create openings for exploitation, for gathering compromising information?
And what does it all mean for transparency, for accountability, when these powerful networks and alleged abuses start coming to light?
Yeah, what are the broader implications?
This deep dive has definitely opened up some potentially very dark corners, and you get the feeling that exploring these topics further could reveal even more layers underneath.
Absolutely. It's a potent reminder of how complex power is, how easily it can be abused, and the hidden connections that might exist between seemingly different worlds. As you said, further thought on this could certainly uncover more within this, well, this intricate and unsettling web.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're venturing into, well,